What's up, guys? So we're back again. They will probably be cursing again because life. So far, so good though. This is I believe it's a 13, right? Kia Forte. I'm good. And it needs front brakes, so we're gonna put some front brakes on it. The rotors are in great shape. The calipers are in great shape, and we're in Florida, so there's not much rust. So all we're really doing on this is a pad swap, and we'll probably do an oil change while we're under there. So it should be pretty simple. We're going to be putting on pads. We've gotten the gold level wear-over pads. We've got them out just so you can see them. They come wrapped like this. I unwrapped one. They come with hardware, which is awesome. We've got our caliper compressor here, some brake cleaner, and some disc brake quiet to put on there so they don't squeak and make a bunch of noise on us. Should be a simple process. We've already got the tire off. We'll take you down there, show you how to remove the caliper, clean everything up, swap out the pads. Alright, here we are down at the brakes. We've got the car properly supported on a jack stand so it's safe. We even got the jack sitting there for a good double measure of safety. The tire is off. Here's our brake caliper, and here are our pads inside the caliper. It's a pretty quick process. Shouldn't take much. There's a bolt down here and a bolt here. They're 14 millimeters, and what they do, they go through the bracket on the caliper and they hold to this pin here, and the pin slides, and that's how this moves as the brakes wear. So I'm pretty sure I already got these loose. Like I said, they're 14 millimeter, I think. Yeah, I already got it loose. The top one should be loose. I don't intend on taking the top one all the way out. I'm going to take this bottom one all the way out, and then hopefully this will kind of use this pin here, hinge upwards, and I could push it out of the pin without having to take this all the way apart. So there's our bottom bolt. Set that where we won't lose it. Oh, look at that. And it's going to hinge up, and then we're just going to push this whole pin out like that. Don't ever let this hang by this hose. This is heavy. This is just a rubber hose. I'm going to set it right here on top of this rotor for now. And we're going to inspect our pins. This has plenty of grease on it, and it's not rusty, and it was nice and free when it came out. This one's also nice and free, so I'm not going to mess with them at all. Our new brakes came with new hardware, so the hardware and the pads are going to go, and they should just pop out. One pad. Oof. These were about dead too. This is a good time. It's two pads. In fact, this one is just about on metal there. Once they get down to metal off the friction materials, when you start ruining your rotor. So this was really good timing, because this rotor is still in excellent shape. You want to run your fingers over it. It should feel smooth. If you do feel a little bump in it, take your fingernail and run your fingernail over it. If you can't feel the groove with your fingernail, you're fine. Which there's no grooves to be felt with our fingernail, so this rotor's fine. No reason to mess with it. We'll get our old hardware out. We're going to take some brake cleaner, clean the dust off of this, and then, well, actually before we do that, let's collapse our caliper here. We're going to take one of our old pads and just set it on the piston here, and that might not be. Will this fit without it? Yeah, it will. Okay, so we're not going to use an old pad. We're just going to have to be careful. I really like this caliper compressor. I got this probably 6 months ago, or yeah, about 6 months ago, and it's like a wrench, like a ratcheting wrench or something like that. You just now that I got the slat taken up, if you watch the piston as I crank this, the piston will go in slowly. I'm going to go slow. We don't want to force it in quickly because we don't want to hurt anything. Some people will tell you that you have to release the bleeder screw on the caliper before you do this. Any mechanic that's been a mechanic for any length of time will tell you that honestly makes no difference. I've been working on cars for probably 11 years now. I've done every brake job ever without releasing that bleeder screw, unless it was for demonstration, and I've never had a problem. So we're just going to go little bits at a time. And this is going in easy. I can do this with one finger. Your piston should go back into the caliper easily. If it's stuck or really hard to push in, replace the caliper. It should move smoothly, which this one is. We're just going one crank at a time. By the time we're done, this will be all the way back in there. we go, it bottomed out. Hit the reverse and loosen this a bit. Pull it back out. That is collapsed. And if you look closely, this is coming back out a little bit. That's because of the pressure in there is going to push it back a little bit. But it only came back out probably a 1/16 of an inch. It should be fine. Try and keep that clean. So that's good to go. That's good to go. We'll clean up the surfaces here where our brake hardware goes. Get new brake hardware in it. Get new pads in it and put it back together. I'm going to stick my head right in the way of the camera. That's good enough. The brake pads don't actually slide on these, just the hardware sits in there. We just want to make sure there's no big chunks of stuff, try and get as much of the rust out as we can. We can see this one, we can see shiny metal again already. It's one nice thing about working on newer cars. Things are usually easy. And I said usually. 2 pads and new hardware. When buying brake pads, I always tell people it's important to buy decent pads that come with hardware. And if you don't, you can sometimes buy the hardware separately. But the point is, change your hardware. You'll thank yourself for it. And it just slides in there like that. Also, once you've done this, I mean, you can do this. This is the basic process to this is almost the same on every car. Once you've done this on one car, you can do this on most cars. All right, so we've got our hardware clipped in where it goes. Everything's clean. The caliper's compressed. We're ready for our pads. Now, you'll see in your kit there's 2 different pads. One of them has this metal bracket on it. One of them doesn't. Well, I guess 2 is going to have this and 2 aren't. This metal bracket is a squeaker. And the reason for the squeaker is to let you know when your brake pads have worn down. You'll see it's on this little plateau. When the brake pads have worn down to this point, this squeaker will start touching the rotor and will make a squealing sound when you press your brakes. That's to let you know that you need to change your brakes. And on this car, the squeaker goes on the bottom on the inside, and the one without the squeaker goes on the outside. I'm not going to put any grease on these, because I feel no need for it. There are certain applications where I do feel the need for it. This car, I don't. This is a newer car. Everything that I just took apart was really clean. It didn't have, I don't know what I did with the little parts. These old ones didn't have any grease on them, and these are from the factory. The car mostly spends its life on the highway. It doesn't go off-road. She doesn't live on a dirt road. And why would you put grease near a surface that you don't want grease and take the chance of getting grease on it when it's not absolutely necessary? But what we will do is spray, it's a high-tack stuff called disc brake quiet on the back of these pads and on the ears of this caliper and on the face of the piston here. What that does is it doesn't glue, it tacks the pads to the caliper so they don't vibrate around while you're stopping and make a squealing sound. And that stuff is simply called disc brake quiet. It works just like a normal, like a 3M spray glue sort of stuff. You spray it on there on both surfaces, let it sit for a minute, and then put it all together, and it holds it still. So let me get that sprayed on there, and then I'll be right back. Now that it's on here, we're going to let it sit for a minute and get tacky, and then we'll put the pads onto the caliper bracket and then put the caliper on. And we'll be done with this side with the exception of pumping up the pedal. Alright, now that our disc brake quiet has had a minute to dry and it is tacky, we're going to go ahead and slide these pads in, and I'm going to try to keep my fingers off of the surface where the caliper is going to touch, which is in the middle here, because I don't want to get it all ruined with dirt that's off my hands. Remember, no squeaker on the outside and squeaker on the inside. And we're Again, we're not using any grease. In this situation, I don't see it necessary. They're on there. Your caliper, which also has the disc brake quiet on it. Slide the pin into the boot. And here's something that's important too. When you slide the pin into the boot, come unattached. Make sure the boot clicks underneath the little ridge here on the pin. That's this little boot here is a dust seal and a water seal, and you want to make sure that it's on there all the way to keep dust and water out. Then we put that down, put our bolt back in, take our wrench, tighten it. This doesn't have to be super tight. No, I don't know a torque spec for it. No, I'm not going to look one up. Alright, that is done. Now we just got to pump up the pedal, take up this slack.
Did you tighten the top one?
I believe. Yes.
Okay.
Pump the pedal, take up the slack. Make sure you do that, because if you don't, when you go to get in the car and you put it in gear, you will not have a brake pedal, and it will be funny for everybody but you.
Here.
Also check your brake fluid level.
Hold this and I'll pump the...
Teamwork. Fixers. She's going to go pump the pedal. If you look in here, you'll see the piston come out and take up the slack.
Ready?
Yep, go ahead. There it is. See the piston moving? The camera doesn't really want to focus. Alright, that was it. It took up the slack and now the caliper doesn't move. And that's all that we need to do. We are done on this side. Do the driver's side the same way. And again, make sure you double check your brake fluid level and you are good to go.